Far more than we think. Making Sense of Spirituality by Angelo. Chapter 55. Freedom is Free. Seeing the world afresh through these wonderful new spiritual spectacles has changed everything about my life. If I had to sum it all up in a single word, that word would be freedom. I've been released from my own self-limiting beliefs, and I'm free from buying into the madness of the world that I used to so readily believe in. The pain and suffering I experienced caused me to accept change, and in so doing I have found the keys to freedom. By gradually letting go of ego, I am slowly escaping fear. Freedom from fear is the experience that we're all looking for. Without fear, we can be happy and free. There's nothing to fear because we have an understanding of how life works. We have access to spiritual tools that we can use to shape our lives and deal with anything and everything that life throws at us. Even death no longer holds any fear for me. All I need to do is to maintain my spiritual practices and allow myself to keep growing and changing, and all will be well. This is the basis of faith, and faith brings freedom, and freedom brings utter bliss. We live in trying times, and the world can seem to be very far from the heavenly place that I'm trying to describe. Our economic, political and cultural systems all seem to be under great strain, and many of us are swamped by the burdens of coping with the challenges of life. The suggestion that spirituality can be the solution to many of our problems is likely to be seen by many as naive, inadequate, old school, irritating, irrelevant and already proven to be a failure. For some, the idea may cause outrage and resentment. There's a perception that somehow spirituality is out of touch with the harsh realities of life. My perception, however, is that spirituality is the real truth of existence, and that the crazy world created by humankind is the thing that is out of touch. The catch-22 is that we can't see this truth until we embrace spirituality, but we won't embrace spirituality because it makes no sense from an ego point of view. And this is the real issue that this book's trying to address. We all have freedom of choice, and none of us likes being told what to do. The choice will always remain ours to make, but if we use our egos to make that choice, we already know what the answer will be. Ego will always choose ego. My hope is that this book will allow a different perspective, so the full implications of this decision can begin to be seen. We tend to make decisions based on what's in our own best interests, but for me the truth is that I never really knew what was best. I thought I knew what was best for me, but the reality was that I did not. The reluctant decision I made to embrace spirituality has turned out to be far more significant and beneficial than I could possibly have anticipated. It was only when I let go that I really began to live. Freedom has not only made me much happier, it's given me purpose. My overriding purpose in life now is to live as unconditional love. I have the opportunity to do this in every moment of every day, whether it's in my relationships, my work, my leisure time, or driving my car. In reality, this is a very tall order, because my ego will always try to get in on the act. But when I do frequently stumble, this gives me the opportunity to learn and grow some more. In truth, I have nothing to prove, nothing to achieve, and nobody to impress. I can simply show up for life and try to love unconditionally. I've no idea where it may lead, but that is perfectly okay with me. Another benefit of freedom is that I now feel a connection to every other human being, animal and plant on the planet. I try to see the underlying reality of every person or situation, rather than judging and recoiling. Every one of us has a background and a story, and all of us are victims to a greater or lesser extent. Most of us act the way we do out of ego-based fear, hence the appropriate spiritual response of forgiveness and compassion is often lost to condemnation and revulsion. Even the most hardened, bitter, obscene, violent criminal masks a beautiful spirit that has gone off course and fallen prey to the madness of this world. This attitude will sound ridiculously weak and naive to an ego mind, but in spiritual terms it is the objective truth. Many people live in fear without ever realizing they have a choice not to. This is a mistake to be forgiven rather than a crime to be punished. People may constantly repeat the same mistakes, apparently without remorse or any consideration for others. But blindness is not a crime. It's not my place to judge anyone. My serenity can remain intact in the midst of all the chaos that surrounds me, provided I remain connected to spirit. We may worry that spiritual power in the hands of unscrupulous people will lead to exploitation. Well, people do try to use spirituality to manipulate and control others for their own gain, but such behaviour can be seen as not truly spiritual. To try to use spiritual principles from a position of ego is a contradiction in terms. Now, this does happen on a widespread basis, of course, but it happens because we tend to look to others to meet our spiritual needs. I believe we can all access the spiritual power within through our own regular practice. Following someone else leads us away from ourselves. We can listen and learn from others, but we ultimately will need to look within ourselves to find the truth. I've used words such as bliss and heavenly in this short chapter, and there's a risk that any reader will see these things as desirable yet out of reach. I'm open to the accusation that it's all very well for me to have been fortunate enough to experience these things, but that not everyone is so lucky. My circumstances may be considered to have been favourably unique, and perhaps not relevant for the majority of people. Well, any of us can decide for ourselves, but all I can do is state as clearly and as honestly as I can that I believe spirituality is freely available to all individuals, whatever their age, background or circumstances may be. Every single one of us is worthy of a wonderful life, and we can all experience heaven on earth if we choose to. Any unfavourable circumstances will, I believe, correct themselves if we place our trust in the spiritual principles that I've tried to describe. That's been my experience and my observation of many others, and it is my absolute belief. Freedom is available to all of us. There is no valid reason for anyone to count themselves out. There may seem to be an apparent price to pay for this freedom, but freedom is actually free. We may feel we're paying a price by giving up our ego, but it's the ego that has caused the problems in the first place. There's nothing to fear other than fear itself, and there's nothing to give up other than the idea that surrender is failure. There's no price to pay, either financially or emotionally. Freedom is free for those who are open-minded and willing to embrace change.